Hello and welcome to today's 5-in-1 Mayani Talks, where we will share with you in particular and look at in more detail jewelry as expectation. Now, what do I mean? Let's dive into our 5 facts first and then dig a little deeper. So fact number 1, generational traditions have long dictated what types of jewelry women should wear, when they should wear it, and how they should wear it. Now, fact number 2, when female designers get involved in the mix and women start designing for women and they start creating pieces for women, what they do is they create from a place of joy and creative freedom of expression. And as a consequence, familial expectations and generational expectations do not really take the limelight or the center stage. So they are creating very much from a point of view of expressing what it is like to be a woman and womanhood from a point of view of shared experience. Fact number 3, when female designers put heritage into works of art that they create for women, whether it's jewelry or a bag or shoe, when they design pieces for women and weave heritage into it, what we essentially do is rewrite narratives, providing women with a way to connect with their heritage in a beautiful, powerful, liberating way, free from all those social norms and conditions that have been placed on women historically, at a time when women were not really seen, not really heard. They were seen, as opposed to being heard for their own thoughts and their own voices. Fact number 4, when I create pieces of jewelry with the materials I create with, and when any female designer or artisan creates pieces for women, the materials we select are very specifically selected with women in mind, whether it's a woman's comfort, a woman's values. For me, sustainability features highly, but also with a view to share a woman's story through those materials and not to continue to communicate generational traditions and patterns and ideas that no longer sit with who we are today as women. Fact number 5, heritage is reclaimed through us making choices that are a freedom of choice, not an obligation for us to have to make. Now, why am I moving swiftly through these facts today? Because I wanted to focus a bit more on generational traditions when it comes to jewelry. So traditionally speaking and historically speaking, a lot of women's jewelry has not only been dictated by society in terms of what types of jewelry we're supposed to wear, styles of jewelry, when we're supposed to wear them, what we're supposed to wear them for, but also how we're supposed to wear them. And the problem is that a lot of these rules and ideas came into place back when society didn't hear women's voices. We just saw women as largely objects of desire, objects of possession, because once upon a time, marital vows actually declared and legal laws actually stated in some parts of the world that women belonged to their husbands. I think if not in majority parts of the world, we were seen as possessions as opposed to actually free-thinking beings who are able to voice ourselves and share our ideas and thoughts freely. So because of that, when these ideas were set in place and these pieces of jewelry were crafted and we were told how to wear them, when to wear them, which way to wear them, those then patterns started getting passed down through generations of families, becoming generational traditions. And the problem with these generational traditions is that when we as women continue to follow them, and we continue to wear these pieces of jewelry in a particular way, particular styles, depending on what's happening, according to what people say is appropriate and inappropriate, we are effectively giving those stories, those narratives, more power. We're giving them more meaning, and we're continuing to live by those narratives instead of rewriting them and reshaping them to honor women's voices more. And when it comes to these generational traditions of jewelry, a lot of the time women didn't have a choice when it came to the jewelry they wore. The jewelry was chosen for them by elder members of their family, or if they were given a choice, and this continues today, if they are given a choice for these cultural occasions and events where traditions are being followed, then their choice is very restrictive. There's a certain selection from which they're allowed to choose or encouraged to choose, and they're dissuaded from going away from that choice because it wouldn't be right, it wouldn't be seen appropriate. And equally, a lot of the time, their jewelry back then and even now was designed for them and created for them by men. So the energies around their jewelry were very masculine as well. Now, on top of that, with a lot of these pieces of jewelry, when it came to women's jewelry, historically speaking, the traditional pieces, they would communicate aspects of a woman's identity that she may not wish to identify with. So, for example, across the world, this would happen. Women would wear certain pieces of jewelry to show that they're married or unmarried. Women might wear certain pieces of jewelry to show that they're childbearing, can actually have children, are fertile, versus not able to have children, not fertile, barren. Or they would wear certain pieces of jewelry to show that they're from a rich family or a poor family. So wearing the jewelry was not so much about them, more about their family, showing their wealth and status through the jewelry they're adorning their daughter or woman in their family with. Or equally would be jewelry used to communicate about a woman whether she's pure, for example, or obedient. Essentially, women would wear pieces of jewelry or be encouraged to wear pieces of jewelry to show that you're a good daughter or a good wife or a good woman, not for freedom of expression. And why is this a problem? Well, it means that for women, a lot of this traditional jewelry and jewelry that exists today for women as well, majority of it has been inspired by traditions. A lot of this jewelry is tied to a sense of duty, an obligation, an expectation to wear, and of course identity labels that we do not necessarily live by or resonate with, for want of a better word. So yes, now I also looked into how this compares for men, because it's only fair to look at both sides. Now when it comes to men and men's jewelry, historically speaking, they had a lot more control and choice over the pieces of jewelry they wore. They got to choose the materials, the size of jewelry, the shape. They had a lot more involvement in the making of their pieces of jewelry. And people who'd wear this would be warriors, kings, princes, noblemen. Lots of different types of men would wear jewelry, historically speaking, and even in present day. And they would have a lot more choice, let's say, about the type of jewelry they'd wear. But also for them, jewelry, and for how society viewed it when they wore jewelry, it was very much for a display of status, of wealth, of power, of dominion over other men, or even as a form of protection, as a protection charm. So the kind of ideas behind pieces of jewelry men wore versus women wore, traditionally speaking, were very different. Men's is very much about freedom and liberation and power, whereas women's is very much about subjugation, following duty, obligation, expectation, conforming, not really freedom of expression in any way. So in going on with that as well, when it comes to men's jewelry, historically speaking, where they did have to wear, and sometimes they still do, royals, for example, have to wear certain pieces of jewelry as part of their regalia. For kings or princes, they have to wear certain pieces of jewelry. But where they had to do this in the past and in the present, there's still power and prestige and independent thought associated with those pieces. When they wear those pieces, they're not in any way taking away from the fact that they're free, independent thinkers, they're autonomous individuals. They're not taking away from their power or their wealth or their status in any way. But for women, it's very different. So why is this important to consider? Because as mentioned earlier, when wearing pieces of jewelry to connect ourselves with our heritage, what we tend to unfortunately end up doing, because the pieces that exist as traditional jewelry are imbibed with this story, this narrative of days of old when women were seen and not heard, we are essentially embodying that too. We're still continuing to follow that narrative, give it power. We continue to, in a way, say that we agree with this narrative, even if we may not. So it's important for us to become conscious so that we can make conscious choices when it comes to our luxury jewelry and our jewelry in general. So that when we make our choices, we're making them from a place of freedom of expression and not from a place of obligation and expectation and duty, which has been the role of a woman for very, very long, for thousands of years. It's not great. But we are reaching a place where enough women, and it's increasing all the time, are becoming more free and supported to actually voice themselves, to actually express themselves, to step away from all this obligation and duty and norms that have been put in place by society and cultures and traditions, none of which actually the woman identifies with or actually agrees with anymore or values. So the shift is happening, and it's slow and steady, and it's by no means a global shift at all just yet, but it is a shift that is taking place. And the more of us that shift, just like drops in an ocean, before you know it, you have an ocean. So it's important for us to look at this. And when it comes to women designing for women, this is important, because when women design for women or create pieces of jewelry or any pieces of, whether it's clothing, shoes, accessories for women, when they design for women, they design from a point of view of creative freedom of expression. They are using that piece of jewelry to really embrace what it is to be a woman, to embrace the life of a woman. They understand this, because women, as women themselves, they have life experiences. So they weave that into their design process and into creating for women in a very beautiful and powerful and uplifting way, empowering way, not following familial expectations, what society expects women to wear or culture expects women to wear, stepping away from that. And typically when it comes to the materials they choose those materials from a point of view of looking at a woman's comfort, looking at a woman's body and her beauty from a very female perspective, which with that lived experience is a much more I feel, much more beautiful, much more wholesome, much more holistic viewpoint than when you view women from a male lens, because it just happens that women have been objects of desire and affection for men for a very long period of time. So it's very difficult for that to be separated. But women, when looking at other women, see us from a much more holistic and soulful and wholesome view, I feel. So when women design for women, the materials are also selected with comfort in mind, with weight in mind, with achieving balance but not necessarily symmetry, with how well this piece is going to flow through a woman's life, so versatility. And these pieces of jewelry that are created, each element, as with me for example, each thread and each bead carries a woman's story and is not at all woven in or used to in any way carry any other story, a societal norms story or story of family expectation. No, it's designed to create a woman's story and to honor her. And when heritage is woven into these pieces by female designers and artisans, of course, what we do is essentially give you the freedom to wear pieces that allow you to connect with your heritage in a way that is authentic and beautiful and celebrates womanhood from a female perspective, not from a point of view of obligation or duty or expectation in any way, but from a true place of freedom of self-expression. So if you've enjoyed today and you've enjoyed this video, I welcome you, of course, to hit the like button below, subscribe to keep on top of everything that's happening. The notification bell, of course, is very handy for knowing when another video comes. But in particular, I would love for you in the comments, if you wouldn't mind, share with me whether you have at any point in your life felt like there's been an expectation for you to wear a particular style of jewelry in a particular way, because it wouldn't be considered right to wear something different. It's just the done thing. It's what we do. It's a good thing to wear because people will see you in a particular light. So if you've been encouraged to do that in any way, I'd love to know. And actually, this has brought to mind a little example I wanted to share with you, something that perhaps all of us can identify with: wedding rings. So when it comes to wedding rings, typically speaking, I have grown up, of course, from an Indian background, specifically speaking, Gujarati community background. And I have no end of times through growing up and even now seen men of South Asian, because it's not necessarily just Indian, South Asian origin, not wearing their wedding rings. Their wives are obligated almost to wear their wedding rings. It's almost like unheard of for us not to wear our wedding rings. And I think women would feel quite strongly about not wearing their wedding rings. We just don't do that. That's just not, we don't do that. It's not. But for men, it seems quite easy for them not necessarily to wear their wedding ring. Now, this doesn't apply to every relationship, of course. It depends on the circumstances around the relationship, I think, to a degree. And perhaps whether the man you're married to is following cultural expectations or really free in his own thinking. For example, for me, my hubby wears his wedding ring. He's never taken it off since the day we got married, which I think is amazing. I have taken it off. I had to take it off when we had our children, because hospital rules mean you have to take your jewelry off. But I've also had to take it off a couple of times because I was handling something, and like going swimming, for example, even didn't want to lose. I've got a sapphire there in mine, which my hubby picked out himself. He actually designed my ring with a woman. So there we go. I hadn't realized the significance of it until now. Looking back, I actually asked him the other day. I said, "Did you?" He said, "Yes, I was dealing with a woman. It was a woman who was involved in the creating of your jewelry, of your ring." I did ask him to pick out my ring. Now a lot of women choose their ring, and I think that's a beautiful thing if your fiance invites you to choose your ring, or perhaps you express that wish to choose your ring, because it's important to be true to yourself and your voice. For me, it felt right to ask him to just create something that surprised me, because for me it's almost like, how well do you know me? It's a bit of a how well do you know me? Anyway, for me, I've taken it off many times. I still take it off when I'm modeling my 5-in-1 hand bracelet as well. So he has never taken it off. So it isn't in all cases, but definitely there are a significant number of men who walk around without their wedding ring. It's perfectly fine. It's not frowned upon. It's not seen as socially inappropriate. I don't even know if there's any feelings of guilt associated with it on their part. I doubt it. But women, on the other hand, don't walk around without their wedding ring, you see? And that, in a sense, it means that our wedding ring, in some way, is an obligation or an expectation or a duty that we're meant to fulfill. And we're supposed to keep it on our finger. In some ways, it's very imprisoning that way, because you don't have the freedom of choice of after getting married whether you wear it or not. And if your husband's not wearing it, it's almost like, well, why should you have to wear it? So I'll leave you with those thoughts today. I'll be back again, no doubt, next week as we wrap up this month of exploring in more detail the connection between jewelry and womanhood. And next month, of course, there'll be a new topic that connects to this and just takes us a little bit deeper along the journey. Thank you for joining me, and remember, because your jewelry should always be more than just an afterthought. Bye for now.